All right, so we're back with another Simpsons Unhinged. We're going to head to number 22 on our list. So, quick recap. First episode was Lisa Goes Gaga. Terrible episode. Second episode was when Homer and Marge were in the 90s and they tried to retcon a plot hole with Bart's birth. Um, Homer being with Bongo and how Bongo was a friend of his and then he was taken away and then he decides not to trust dogs or apes. We talked about the Olympic episode in Vancouver when, around the Olympic time when Homer and Marge were back curling. Homer at the bat is the episode that beat the Cosby Show in first run syndication when it was on Thursday nights. We talked about Maud's death and how big it was. We talked about the 15th season Christmas episode, which Homer tries to atone for himself and Ned decides to be jealous for some reason. Principal and the Pauper, we talked about, of course, that episode that jumped the shark. Homer and Apu, getting Apu in an episode for good reason. Lisa becoming a vegetarian, and how Paul McCartney was only roped in because they had to make Lisa a vegetarian. Love is a many strangled thing, when the Simpsons were trying in season 22 to justify strangling Bart. Episode 31's Todd Todd, Where Has Felt Forsaken Me. That's the episode in which Ned throws Todd out of the house for not respecting God after blaming him for Marge's death. Lisa gets an F1 because, well, I needed an F1 one. The gay marriage episode from episode 16, season 16, how it transcended things that led to Patty coming out of the closet and then Smithers coming years later. Diary Queen, we talked about Edna's diary and how Bart was going to use it for evil, but then he used it for good, trying to fix things, but then Lisa had to ruin it. We talked about the Family Guy versus Simpsons episode of 2014 and why maybe giving the Simpsons a second wind. Bart the Mother is the episode in which Bart and Marge have relationship problems and Bart tries to take care of some eggs. We talked about the Italian double dip from season 17. That was the episode in which Bart, the family go to Italy and then find Sideshow Bob as mayor, and it was actually set up by a B plot in the previous episode, but at least learning to be Italian. We talked about Homer's enemy, the famous episode that basically made an enemy out of lots of people and made Homer the good guy. And then, of course, the 20th episode, we talked about Kill Gil and Marge's psychosis and all that throughout the series. We talked about the Simpsons movie last week and how it was actually pretty good. I was going to talk about a season 26 episode this time, but I couldn't find a season 26 episode because it was on the randomizer. So I'm going back to season 16 with the backup episode. We did the gay marriage one. Now we got to go to the Super Bowl. I got to feel it. Simpsons are going to the Super Bowl. We talk about the Super Bowl episode and everything, and even after the Simpsons episode. So let's watch Homer and Ned's Hail Mary. Jerk Homer, Marge's worries, Bart's pranks, Lisa's causes, Maggie not talking a lot, Grandpa being senile, Patty and Selma boring Marge, Arnie Sif is a jerk, Chief Wiggum making things happen, Mr. Burns being a dick. You can never stop the Simpsons. Heaven knows they've been trying for years and they still come back for more. 37 seasons is a bit much, don't you think? It's a crazy Simpsons. Something happens. A do 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 do. This is not a clip show. Have no fear. I've got topics for years. It's Super Bowl 39, February 6th, 2005. It's the New England Patriots versus the Philadelphia Eagles in one of the best Super Bowls, most underrated Super Bowls in history. At 6 o'clock, they tipped off from Jacksonville's Alltel Stadium. Why they didn't have another Super Bowl in Jacksonville, I don't know. But anyway, New England and Philly were playing. The Patriots just came off a massive upset of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were 15-1 in the regular season, to get to be the AFC champion. And the NFC champion was none other than the Philadelphia Eagles, who finally, after 3 years, got over the hump of the NFC title game and won at home, nevertheless. So the Pats beat the Eagles 24-21. Yeah, I know. Just let me get this out of the way. So anyhow, Super Bowl 39 was a good one. The Pats won, screwed over the Eagles, but then 13 years later, the Eagles would get back at the Pats with the Philly special. And of course, as a Patriots fan, I'm pissed off. But I know what you came for, so I'll give you to you now. This is a screenshot of The Simpsons with the 5 celebrity guests. So 5 Simpsons, 5 sports figures. You see Tom Terrific, you see Warren Sapp, Yao Ming, Michelle Kwan, and even LeBron James. LeBron James in it. So here's the episode. The episode after the Super Bowl, because that Super Bowl was on Fox, was Homer and Ned's Hail Mary pass. One day, the Simpsons are walking through Springfield Park, which is unkept and all that. They even bump into the crazy cat lady who's not being crazy. She actually is on medication until Marge tells her that she's on Reese's Pieces. Marge has a bright idea to have a fundraiser to fix up the park, but someone beat her to it, and she's upset, saying that Junior Legion really grinds my gears. So they have competitions and all that. Bart ends up flipping a frog at a carnival thing, winning a big octopus, but then Homer outdoes him and does a dance to taunt Bart, and everyone appreciates it. Comic book guy tapes it and actually reveals the name Jeff Albertson. A lot of people thought it would be Louis Lane. I would have loved to see that, but no, it was Jeff Albertson. And he decides to take advantage of Ned. Well, Ned was the one who taped it, of Ned's nativity, and basically decides to upload Homer's video for the internet. In the Springfield computer lab, the school's computer lab, Jimbo and crew watch videos. Boxer shot up by wife, beauty pageant anorexia, and then this one called Big Ass Baryshnikov, which Homer does his dance with the octopus, shirtless. There wasn't video in that screenshot that actually was not talked about. It was called Loot Fruit. Of course, that's Martin playing the lute, and everyone thinks Martin is homosexual. Martin probably will be asexual and want to be with a robot. But that's a different story. So anyway, Homer gets laughed at throughout the internet, and Homer berates the fact that internet is supposed to be for monkeys doing it. And then there's this Italian-American bus for stereotypes, and then Homer ends up being Donkey Kong to Mario's, Mario. So Homer then gets asked by a football player to choreograph his own the dances and will get paid for it too. So anyway, so the joke was on everyone else. That's Homer's dance actually helps him out. So Homer decides to do some kind of boot camp for athletes and manages to get Tom Brady, even though that Tom Brady is self-sufficient. LeBron James was in this episode. Michelle Kwan, figure skating legend. Yao Ming, 7'6", Chinese inspiration, and trying to get out of chores by pretending he doesn't know Chinese. I mean, English. And Warren Sapp, pretty good defensive tackle for both the Bucks and the Raiders. Ned actually hears about this and actually decides to take his video camera to make a movie about Cain and Abel, a Bible story with Ron and Todd being part of it. And there's the captures of hell, the stem cell research and all that. And then Mr. Burns hears about that film and decides to have Ned do some kind of piece. It actually takes 13 hours. Tales of the Old Testament. Of course, if you're a biblical guy, you know that the Old Testament was full of blood and gory and all that, and the New Testament wasn't so bad. So for 13 hours, it was just gory. And then Marge decides to finally snap, tells Ned that there's more than life than the Old Testament and all that. However, Ned retorts back, and then Marge decides to boycott what Burns owns. Burns says, "You can't do that. I own the nuclear power plant. How are you going to get clean power source?" But then the crowd blurts out alternative forms such as conservation, wind power, and a few other things. And then Burns is like, "Who told you that?" That talking tree in the commercial. Burns, realizing that he's going to lose his monopoly, decides to boycott the film, and basically Ned is upset. So anyhow, Homer does get asked to do the halftime show because of all the fines that people are picking up and all that. Homer laughs, saying, "Ha, sucker! I would have done it for free. Do it for free. Damn it. Okay. I would do it even if I have to pay you. Then pay us. Damn it. Do I have to pay you in credit cards? No, cash. Damn it." So anyway, Homer tries to think about a halftime show, but has no bright ideas. At the same time, Ned is upset because his film is being blacklisted. So Homer goes to church in the middle of the night before the Super Bowl and prays for an idea about the Super Bowl show, and finds Ned there too. So Homer and Ned decide to combine their powers, while Homer says that he can do his halftime show and then basically take advantage of people and take advantage of Ned. It's a win-win situation. So they decided to come up with the story about Noah's Ark. And the halftime show is sponsored by many corporations like Ford and even Moe's Tavern. And then the guy's like, "How did you get to be a halftime sponsor, Mo?" Mo says, "I learned about it by playing pool and all that." So he would hustle pool, but then he would whack the guy in the back and all that. That understanding. So anyway, they do the story about Noah. It seems to be good. I mean, the pro athletes are the ones in the ark and all that. Of course, in real life, Tom Brady would not have been there because the Patriots were in the Super Bowl, but obviously they didn't predict it. So anyway, they do the Noah's Ark thing. Ned appears, reads a passage from the Bible, and of course they flood the stadium. They have to unflood the stadium, and then basically everyone boos the message. Ken Brockman announces about how the halftime show and was terrible and all that. Of course, that was the promo, but it went the opposite direction. Remember, this is 2005, the year after Nipplegate with Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake, and how basically everyone hated on Janet but cheered on Timberlake. Of course, that was basically not just white privilege, but the fact that he was a male superstar and Janet Jackson was on her way down. Yeah, right. So anyway, it was a blatant display of religion and decency and all that. So they basically go from one extreme to the other extreme. Of course, the real 2005 halftime show was that Paul McCartney? I can't remember that one because obviously, yeah, the NFL after Nipplegate decided to freak out and decide to have halftime shows of legends like U2, Paul McCartney, and the Rolling Stones, basically going old school in a bad way. Anyway, a mother is interviewed after the halftime show and said, "You raise your kids to be secular humanists, but these showbiz types force religion on you." Of course, a secular humanist is basically ones who hate on religion. The little boy asked, "Mommy, why wasn't I baptized?" You can still baptize a kid. You can even be baptized as an adult. So basically, Homer and Ned grown and all that. So that was it. And all that. So, of course, this episode was revealed to be Jeff Albertson, the comic book guy, and all that. So, he did everything. 23 million people actually watched this, making it the most watched episode since season 14. And that spelling bee episode. Anyway, there was a response. One guy said that he liked Homer's story more than Ned's and they could connect. Everyone said it was basically lazy. It was because of the Super Bowl and all of that. And a lot of people kind of hated it or loved it. I don't know. So it wasn't half bad, this episode and all that. When I first watched it, I thought it was cool. And to parody 2004 and how the NFL basically were shocked about the halftime show and all that and made it the other extreme, bad extreme. So, anyhow, this episode came out and then American Dad premiered. That was the episode in which yeah, it was a series premiere of American Dad, Fox's new cartoon. Not Family Guy, but American Dad. Of course, American Dad was accused of plagiarizing Family Guy, who plagiarized The Simpsons. But the first episode was when Stan is the CIA agent and all that, and shoots the toaster, and then tells Steve in a popularity thing to do what he has to do, and Steve overdoes it with the popularity thing. It wasn't a bad premise and all that. I mean, it got some Family Guy voice actors, except for Carlin, to do characters and all that. It was kind of awkward. We all thought it was going to be done after 3 or 4 years tops, but American Dad, since 2005, has kept going and all that. It's kind of like Bob's Burgers. Like, you think the show isn't going to last long, and then it lasts 2 decades and all that. And of course, Family Guy overstaying its welcome, The Simpsons overstaying its welcome. So Fox knows how to do cartoons that overstay their welcome. So it wasn't bad, as I said. It was a good episode, decent premise. It was the Super Bowl, so you knew something was fishy. So we're done this episode. So next episode is a special weekday episode. So this episode comes out today, May the 30th. In 3 days, on Tuesday, June the 2nd, there will be a special weekday episode because I actually cannot work that day because I have to go to the dentist early. So I got the day off, so I will throw a Simpsons episode around. And we're going to go back to season 9. The randomizer said season 28, but since I couldn't find a season 28 episode that satisfied me, I went back to the backup plan. And we're going to go to season 9, and we're going to find out the one main purpose. Where the fuck is Springfield? So join me on Tuesday. Why don't you? I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.